Hello and welcome back to Make Do. David here, and we're back with a project that we have had on our list since we first got our 3D printer. It is no surprise that James and I are huge Star Wars fans, so when Do 3D reached out and asked us to make a video using any of their designs, we of course picked the classic Stormtrooper helmet. So thanks Do 3D for providing the files for this project. You can check out their vast collection of printer-ready STL files over at do3d.com. They have projects spanning the MCU, DCU, Star Wars, and other fandoms. Enough about that, let's get started. To prep our files for printing, I jumped into the Prusa Slicer. The helmet does come separated into smaller manageable parts that should be easy to print and assemble, but I decided to slice a few parts down to better fit on the relatively smaller build area of our Prusa. This also allowed me to better orient the prints to minimize sanding later on, but don't worry, there'll be plenty of sanding. The majority of the helmet will be printed on our filament printer in Polyteris PLA, with a few detailed parts being printed in resin on our Anycubic Photon Mono X. The FDM prints came out pretty clean and everything looks like it should fit together nicely. Now I just have to move on to some sanding. James, could you give me a hand?
Oh yeah, here's the sandpaper. See ya!
What the f***? Without any help from James, I gave all the pieces a rough sanding, and now I can move on to assembling the majority of the helmet, before more sanding. If you did not split your files into smaller pieces like we did, this should actually be pretty straightforward, and you can skip most of these steps. But since I can't make anything easy, I have a bit of a tricky glue up. I did do a quick test piece to work out the gluing process. My plan is to tack the parts together with CA glue, then reinforce all the seams with 5-minute epoxy. This method appears to hold up and the seam disappears with a little bit of sanding. So I start by tacking the parts together with some CA glue, making sure everything is aligned. Then I hit it with some activator to speed things up, of course. Then, once things are secured, I will go back with some 2-part 5-minute epoxy to reinforce all the seams. But I will get the whole helmet tacked together first. We're not going to attach the front grille part just yet. There will be some detail painting that we have to do later on down the line, and having this detached will make that a lot easier. With everything assembled, I can now reinforce the helmet. On past projects, we would have been okay with just using CA glue, but we find that with time, the glue can become brittle and is prone to cracking. So now we reinforce all of our joints with 2-part epoxy. Once the epoxy is mixed, I simply brush the interior seams using a cheap acid brush. As always, we will have links to all the products used for this build in the description below. These are affiliate links, so if you make a purchase, we will get a small kickback that will go to help support future projects. Now for the task of making this helmet look like one piece, which means hiding these seam lines. I'm going to be using this spot glazing putty I saw Bill Duran using over on Punished Props Academy. It has a bit of a strong smell, so be sure to use proper ventilation and protection. Fun fact, this weird pointy part of these types of caps is used to puncture the seal on the tube.
How is that fun?
Shut up. I'm just using popsicle sticks to apply the putty. Once it dries, it's very easy to sand, so I apply it pretty thick in areas that need it. These fancy toothpicks from the local fancy grocery store have this flat end that is really nice for precision application. I've learned that most anything can be used to apply goo. After letting the putty dry, I give everything a very thick coat of filler primer. I don't even worry about getting drips at this stage. I just want to build up the surface as much as I can and hide as many layer lines as I can. Not that there's any left, because I sanded so good. Off camera, I did end up sanding and repriming until I was happy with the finish. The bulk of the helmet is in good shape, so I can move on to these detail parts. These parts were printed in resin on our Anycubic Photon Mono X. The earpieces just need a little assembly before we can glue them onto the main helmet with some CA glue and 2-part epoxy. Once these earpieces are in place, the helmet gets another thick coat of primer to help blend all the parts together. Oh, you thought I was going to do all the sanding off camera and you wouldn't have to watch me sand? No. I really want this helmet to be smooth, like super smooth. So that means more sanding. I go over the whole piece with a fine grit sandpaper. I follow that up with an even finer grit sanding sponge. And then I finish everything up with some 000 steel wool. After a quick dusting and a rinse, we are ready to start painting. The color scheme is pretty straightforward, it's just gloss white. I take my time building up the coat of paint, working slowly to avoid any drips, if the drip gods will it. Now I can get to adding some of the painted details onto the helmet. I let the white paint dry for 48 hours just to be safe before I start taping off the details, starting with this brow line that needs to be painted black. I go in with this fine detail thin masking tape and block out the area, making sure I have a good seal along the tape line. Once the area is defined, I go back and add a perimeter with this frog tape that is designed for delicate surfaces. Then I cover the rest of the helmet with some scrap craft paper. Before we paint the brow line black, I spray the area with matte clear coat. This is a new technique we are trying. The idea being if any paint were to leak under the tape, it will be the clear coat, which you won't be able to see. Then, with all the potential leaks sealed with clear coat, we can add our black paint over top. Also, while I'm painting this, I'm going to be giving these small grille details a coat of flat black as well. Okay, now for the fun part. After waiting an excruciating 24 hours, I can take the masking tape off. And it looks great. Not perfect, but still good. I think that clear coat trick really helped. This would probably end up looking a lot worse if we didn't do that. For the final details, unfortunately, I don't really have any tricks. For these parts, I just took my time and tried to keep my hand steady as I hand painted on the various color blocks. If you were more patient, you could take your time and mask these parts off, but of course I'm not.
Luckily, the original helmets used in the films were a little rough.
Right, so we're gonna call this accurate. Plus, I'm gonna be weathering this thing up, so it's gonna hide a lot of our crimes. For some reason, I don't have gray paint, but luckily it's a pretty easy color to make. We will have a full list of all the Vallejo colors we are using in the description below. Okay, the final stretch. Time to put this all together. Starting with these grille details we painted black earlier. These small vents have some amazing detail that I want to call out. Look, the mesh actually has holes. I'm going to use a little silver gilding wax for our Mjolnir build and a Q-tip to apply just a little silver. Now I can attach these parts to the front grille with some 2-part epoxy. And then I can make the mistake of attaching the grille to the full helmet assembly. This was the wrong choice in the end. You'll see that Do3D's files have these pockets that are designed to hold magnets, and that's the correct way to attach this. The grille section needs to be detachable because otherwise, as we found out later on, this will not fit over my head. But as a display piece, this will work just fine. Okay, if you wanted to go with the fresh, clean, straight from the Death Star Stormtrooper, you could stop right now. But if you're like us, and you probably are because you're watching this video, and you want something a bit more used and grimy, and you also need to cover up some of your spotty hand-painted details, then it's time for weathering. As you probably already know, this is my favorite part of any project. It really ties the pieces together and takes it from being a 3D printed replica to something with a story that looks like it was pulled straight out of a galaxy far, far away. I'm going to be using my favorite cheap black and brown acrylic paint, as well as the Sands of Tatooine yellow, along with some mop brushes and sea sponges, Camino sponges, to build up layers of grime. My basic method is to make a total mess and try and clean it off the best I can. This will give it that realistic wear and allow grime to build up in logical spots.
While David continues his weathering, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons. Your support helps us finance our builds and continue to explore new techniques and tools. If you'd like to become a patron and support the channel, you'll get access to our Discord where you can chat with both David and myself, as well as get behind the scenes content and exclusive patron-only projects. And our Crystal tier members also get access to free Make-Do STL files.
Now for the final touch, the lenses for the eyes. I'm using the same tinted visor that we use for both our Mando and Boba builds. I start by tracing a simple paper template. I then transfer the outline to our visor with a gold Sharpie, giving myself a little bit of extra room. Then I trim out the lenses with a pair of scissors. With those trim, I just glue them into place using a ton of hot glue, and I mean a lot. I don't recommend using CA glue for these, as it can add a gross white haze to the lenses. And with the lenses in, we're finished. I absolutely love this build. This is one of those milestone props that we've been wanting to make since we started 3D printing. So thank you Do3D for helping to make this possible. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on all our future projects. You can also follow us on Instagram as well as Facebook. If you'd like to know more about this channel and all that Make432 has to offer, check out our new website, make432.com, where we will be posting detailed project breakdowns and selling some of our own STL files. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.